Welcome to the Wednesday, June 25th business meeting of Richmond School Board, Board of School Trustees. I don't think I said that right.
Oh, good.
Anyway, the school board meeting tonight. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like you have French. And now we will have the reading of our new mission and vision statements by Susie Heisley.
Our vision is that Richmond Community Schools nurtures the mind, body, and spirit to prepare students to lead lives of choice, purpose, and service. And to fulfill that vision, our mission is that Richmond Community Schools guide students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Thank you.
I should also insert at this point, we received a request from some educational authors. They have seen our vision statement and are wanting to incorporate it into their textbook, which will go into publication if they needed some approval.
Wow. That's
Congratulations to the board.
And now we're ready for our showcase video.
And the showcase video tonight has to do with technology. Mr. Tidrow, do you have any introductory remarks to that?
Yes. This video focuses on our technology integration specialist, Mr. Jim Magoski. Jim was here last board meeting when we had the e-learning specialists, and of course he'll be teaming with them this upcoming year and so forth. But this video was put together by an intern that's working with Misty Hollis's team. And Misty, his name is?
Jake Allen.
Jake Allen. So I think we'll go from there.
This will be my 5th year here at RCS as a tech integration specialist. I guess I've always had an interest in computers and technology. Got my feet wet in high school working with the DOS-based systems back at that time, and then really was intrigued when the Apple Macintosh came out. Got one of those in college and just couldn't put that kind of stuff down. I spent a lot of time helping the teachers figure out how they can use technology in their classroom. Whenever they have a problem or frustrated or have an idea, we'll get together, try and figure out solutions. I do a lot of research, trying to determine what kind of tools are available so that we can experiment with it, and then if it is a good solution, help them implement it. I think a lot of recommendations for what types of technology we should invest in through research and observation of what other school systems are doing, as well as keeping up to date with what is available, maybe exploring some of the out-of-the-box kind of options. It's really been easy to gather information with the onset of Twitter and those kind of social medias to keep up with what other schools are doing or other businesses even, or how they're implementing technology. We really listen to what the teachers are saying about what works in the classroom as far as engaging students. And we find that some of the mobile type technologies such as iPads really help the students to be excited about learning, and we've had teachers really run with that. It's helped them to maintain student interest in what they're trying to communicate to the students, and I think it's been really fun for them. I get really excited when I go into a classroom and see the teachers working on a particular lesson, and the students are just can't sit down. They're just going to town, and as well as they're eager to help other students. I'll see a student maybe struggling a little bit, and a student right next to them will just jump up and say, oh, here's how you get around that kind of problem, or here's what I've done. And that's pretty exciting to see.
Jim has really been a teacher that has stepped up and helped with the collaboration process of integrating technology into my classroom. Anytime I've had a question, he's stopped what he's doing and has actually come over to my classroom and helped with student problems or my problems, trying to figure out how to get things working. And now I'm eager to start working with him one-on-one in my new e-learning specialist position.
We asked Jim to be here, but he's on vacation and he's out of town. So, but I don't know if we want to go into the next phase, the joy of technology. The last meeting we focused on 3 areas. One was the e-learning specialist, gave them firsthand experience working with the groups of teaching Twitter. We also looked at some of the background of our digital conversion process, and we also looked at our Tech Expo. We had a video, if you remember, we had introducing the school board meeting, and we wanted to say that we're up to 305 visitors or assignees for that Tech Expo, so we're excited about that. Again, that's July 15th and 16th. But technology is an area that is ever present. There's a lot of hardware involved. There's a lot of things you can touch. But I think the main thing that you have to think about in the technology department is the people that support these initiatives. And as Jim said, research them, work with the teachers, work with the administrators and the staff, and see what we can do to get those students engaged for that learning process. We have the whole side of business that we have to take care of, but we're not here. The students aren't here because of us. We're here because of them. So we have to make sure that we take care of them. So what I wanted to focus on, the joy of technology tonight, was some of our personnel. And if you could have this up, Josh. I should also point out that we also don't just deal with our internal education and RCS. We also deal a lot with the community. And right now we have 2 of our technicians over at the Wayne County Foundation dinner with 75, 80 iPads working with Mr. Steve Borchers in setting up a different scenario on how he's going to present his information tonight. So I just got a text from Brian Mao, who's over there, and he said he's got 75 up and running. So hopefully we'll have 2 hours of success over there. But I have a PowerPoint slide here of our technology department. Mrs. Pam Lips, who's filling in tonight, put this together. But I just didn't want to have names there. I thought faces would be nice. You don't necessarily have to have my face up there, but I think the others are nice to point out that it's the people behind the scenes that's taking care of things. And we have Pam, and we have Debbie Campbell, who's working a double duty here. She does the technology department assistant. She also works with Barb Bergdahl's department, so she has a full load over there. Again, Jim Magosky is our tech integration specialist. And if we just go down the line, we have 2 network administrators, Scott Nash, Joe Dickerson. They are in charge of that big mess of servers and so forth you saw on the video, as well as additional servers out in our buildings. We have 90-plus servers that we take care of, whether it's hard ones or the virtual servers, but that's still 90-some servers. That's quite a few. Last night we had a power outage at about 4:15 that was out for a couple of hours. We kept things running as long as we could. We have a battery backup system that can run for about 2 hours, but the air conditioning only lasts about 30 minutes when it's a hot day like that as far as the coolness. We noticed about 5 o'clock the temperature got about 100 degrees in some of those back-end servers, so we started shutting those down. And just to give you an example of what has to take place, it took him 3 hours to shut down all those servers so that we wouldn't lose data and so forth. So, and then after the power came back up, came back in and got them back up. So those are the behind-the-scenes things that take place. On the On the right side of that line, we have Frank Ward and Melissa Swafford. They're our data people. They take care of Power School. They take care of feeding information into all of our software products that take student names and take teacher names and so forth. The bottom line would be our technicians. We have 4 technicians that handle all the buildings, that handle all the devices out there. In some organizations, you might have 1 technician per building. We have 4 technicians for all of our buildings. So these guys are hustling. They're taking care of things. They're making sure assessments are ready. End of course assessments this week at the high school for the summer school. Starting Friday, we'll have, and early next week, we'll have the 3rd grade academy kids going in there for their iRead 3 testing over at Test. But we have Josh Carty, Steve Hazelbaker, Rod Landis, and Brian Mao. And we have Josh and Rod here tonight. I'd like to bring them up to the podium, and maybe you guys could ask them some questions. But one of the things that I'd like to have Josh talk about is we have another person on the flow chart there that's right below Debbie Campbell, and that's Holden Smith. Holden's one of our interns, and we're very proud of the fact that we've had over 10 interns over the past 4 years. And I wanted Josh to talk about some of the successes that we've had after those students have left us. Josh, we assign most of the interns to Josh because Josh is in charge of the high school. So we want those students to get exposed to a lot of those higher end issues and so forth. And it's a bigger building, so it gives Josh a little bit of capacity over there. So Josh Carty.
So this is an intern from the high school, from Richmond High School?
This is an intern from IU East? IU East, yes. Holden's from IU East.
Okay.
So he's finishing out his degree there by doing his 240 hours this summer, so you're right. But we have had interns from the high school. We had one this past trimester. Sarah Reifeis was over here helping us for that trimester. So we appreciate the Ivy Tech, the IU East, and the RHS interns right now. So, Josh?
I guess when I start talking about interns, I didn't work with them, but Steve Hazelbaker on our department, he was from Ivy Tech intern, and he then was, I'm not sure the transition, but he's now working with us in the technology department. We accept interns from here, Richmond Community Schools, at the high school, Ivy Tech, and IU East. Steve Hazelbaker works with us. Other success stories, Christian Bulmer, he now works for Dell Corporate. He's a level 3 support. Aaron Suits, he was an Ivy Tech intern and he works for Ivy Tech now. Jarek Steele, he was also from Ivy Tech and now works for Menards on their corporate side up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And when the interns are here, they're a big part of and helps us with our iPad rollouts. And they come and just help me work with different tickets, everything from the top down, working with end users, preparing for testing. All of our high-stakes testing, they help us get things in place that we need.
Now, one of the things we do with the high school interns is if we have ISTEP or ECA tests, we do not allow them to go over there and help facilitate that process. They'll help us set them up, but during the test time, we don't let them go over with Josh. We'll assign them with someone else, so there's no any conflict of interest with that. But so, Josh comes. Oh, go ahead.
Is the learning two-way?
Absolutely. You don't know how much you don't know until you're trying to teach someone else it.
Josh does a good job because it's hard enough to take care of yourself, but when you have to worry about someone else coming in and keep them busy, it does change your workflow. Also, Josh is real good about saying, hey, I'm going to be out tomorrow. Can someone else have some duties for our interns? And he keeps me apprised of that, Debbie Campbell, Jim, and so forth. So, and Josh comes to us, this is his second career. He was a funeral director for his first career. So that was what interested me the most when we saw his application, was that he had that customer service and customer focus background, because that's so important as we go out into the field now and talk to the administrators, the teachers, the students, and so forth. So,
Well, thank you, Josh, for your work. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'd like to bring Rod Landis up as well. Rod is one of our technicians, but he's also our telecom person, so he sets up all the telephones in the district. And this is Rod's second career as well. Some of you know that Rod has his own business outside of here, but Thought, Rob, maybe you could talk about maybe that process of getting these phones and stuff ready for the upcoming season. So,
Yeah, that's always an ordeal. We ask for all the phone changes in the fall or in the spring, and then we hope that we'll get them by the end of summer. Here in a couple of weeks, we'll be starting those changes, but often it'll last into September. So,
because we have hundreds of changes a lot of times.
Yeah,
People moving classes, and we want those phones to follow. And there's a certain system we use so that the front offices will know where those people are. So, but, and talk about that combination of your customer service outside of work and maybe or your other job and what you do here. So.
Fine line to tread. Well, my job outside of school is I own a brewery, and so there's a lot of customer service, and that you have to be on time, and you have to be able to, get things to people when they need it, as soon as it's needed. So it's the same thing when I'm here. We're getting here in the morning, and when the teachers are here, you have a half an hour before class starts, and you have to get as much as you can done in that half hour, which often means we have to remotely get into their computers and do changes, because if you have to drive to 2 schools, you've already eaten up your time. So we try to be in more than one place at a time.
And right now they're running the broadcast live for us. So I want to bring up Holden Smith, our intern, see if he could say a few things about his experience.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Very much for your service also.
So Holden, your last day is
June the 30th.
June the 30th, so it'll be Monday. But maybe Holden, you could talk about some of the things you've done with Josh and some of the other people on our staff, and talk about why you wanted this hands-on experience, what you've been doing to get to this point. So.
Sure. Yeah, this has been a great experience for me. I've had a lot of hands-on work with Josh and some of the other technicians, and I've even went as far as being able to work with some of the network admins also. I had a lot of, some experience working by myself, doing some side projects, but never working with a team. And I would say that there's a great team here. Everybody works together very well. Things are taken care of on time, and it's been a very good pleasure working here.
So your student work is all online, or do you have classroom experience, or?
It's been more of the programming software. Didn't have a lot of hands-on with hardware and other problems. So it's been very nice to.
So we're working with IU East, we're working with Ivy Tech, because a lot of these students don't have that opportunity to work with a larger system and break things down and learn about them, because all their stuff is classroom experience. Holden actually came to me 2 weeks ago and asked if he could borrow one of our large switches that we aren't using right now. We've kind of archived it, and we've let him use that the last 2 weeks and just kind of play around with it, learn the ins and outs of it, because that's a $3,000 to $5,000 piece of equipment that he's not going to buy on his own to get comfortable with it. He knows the bookend part of it, but he doesn't know how to maybe program it in real life. So this gives him an opportunity to have that hands-on experience that when he goes out and talks to the employers, they'll know he has a couple months worth of that experience. So.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
And that's really what I have with our joy of technology. I don't know if you have any questions or comments to me.
Obviously, the people are very important to help make technology joyful.
That's right. I agree.
And is there not also support within each school also?
Right. We use a system with the teachers called a technology consultant, and each building has at least one of those. A lot of times it's the media specialist. That way they can, they're kind of our front line defense. They take requests in. They'll also go down and check out a problem, and if they can solve it, they'll go ahead and solve it. Jane Moss is an example of one of our tech consultants, and we do some train-the-trainer pieces with them. So if we have a large distribution of something, we want to get them in first. We want to talk to them and say, you're going to probably experience some of these pains first. We want to make sure you're aware of them. And then all of our trouble call tickets go through either the front office or through that tech consultant. That way, we have a basic understanding of the language we need, the details. A lot of times, if you don't have that, then you might get a ticket that says help, or my computer doesn't work. We really need some more detail of that, and we can do like what Rod said, maybe do a remote call in to that computer and solve that problem if we have a lot of detail. And those tech consultants are outstanding for doing that. So, and it's a ECA position for them. They don't get paid a lot, I don't think, but they put a lot of time into it, and they like it too, because if we do have a new system, we want them to pilot it out there, and so they get to feel some of that new technology first in their building and help us out. So, but
Suzanne?
I just wanted to tell you, I appreciate that you treat that arm of the business like a business, in that you worry about customer service.
Right.
You worry about timely execution of correcting problems. I think that's important, and I think it's also interesting that you hired folks that have customer service experience, because I think that's sometimes a hard thing for technology types that by nature kind of do well in a room working on programming, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the people that you serve appreciate that you have people working for you that are responsive and good customer servant people.
That's a good point. We can teach some of the technology. They have to have a passion for it. A lot of times technology is not only their job, but their hobby as well. They'll leave here and they'll go do something else. We can teach some of that stuff, but you can't teach that customer service point of view where they're thinking about that end user, that student, that teacher as they walk in. So that's right. Yeah.
I always think of it.
So, yeah.
So, that's good.
Because you can't get stuck with someone that maybe doesn't have that skill set.
Can't explain it to a person who doesn't understand the intricacies of technology. That's what I guess I'm looking for. So.
That's right.
Well, one of the things I always say is technology is great when it works.
That's right.
And so
We agree.
I think that just really says it all about how important our people are, because they keep it working.
So they work hard.
So they are appreciated.
Great.
Anybody else? Dixie?
Well, I just like the fact that we got some faces
I
with
think that's great.
what they do, because I know we talk about them a lot, but then I never know who goes with what operation.
That's right.
So
Good work, Pam.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
helpful.
Thanks to Pam Lips. And next month is the Joy of Operations, so you'll see.
We're going to see you
More of it,
again.
so.
You're just taking over.
Whatever I have to do, so.
I could just add that I think that the bottom row there has a sort of almost like a Secret Service, or I guess you wouldn't call them Secret Service, but a sort of a spy sort of a thing going on, because by going in and having a personal conversation and just explaining what they're doing, they are, they're teaching whoever they're working with how to avoid that situation the next time, and that is crucial to,
I think so.
to the efficiency of your department and the growth of the staff. So that's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, this is also a time for reflections of the board and superintendent, but so I don't know whether you had planned on talking about a presentation that was made today to the Redevelopment Commission, but I would just like to say that we had a team who presented today to the Redevelopment Commission. Dr. Borf was the head of that team, and we had Rob Tidrow and Karen Scalf, and Ron Mays was there. And then we had some media specialists who took time out of their busy summer. Marthea Christ and Kathy Iyer, Jody Marcy, and Lyndon Dennis were also present. And Dr. Borf and his team made a very eloquent presentation to the Redevelopment Commission to hopefully work with our community in our schools with technology, and to do some changes to our libraries, And I don't know if you want to expound on that or not, Dr. Borf.
I'd be
but-
glad to talk about that just briefly, but I'd also be glad to put that PowerPoint that we presented today on the website so people could go through that if they want to. Maybe the application for that might be helpful as well. But what we asked the Redevelopment Commission to consider was assisting us in our digital conversion by a $1.7 million grant to redesign the use of every library we have in the system, from high school to the elementaries. And most of this redesign is around equipment. It's not construction. There is some construction that would be necessary, but by and large, it would not be construction. It would be furniture. It would be technology, devices. And what we would do, we would reap the benefit of that, of course, educationally, by having some spaces redesigned that would facilitate teaching and learning of not only students, but teachers, as well as parents, and where we saw a real benefit and why the Redevelopment Commission was the source of was the place that we turned for a source of revenue on this. We saw economic development as the byproduct here, because we would be opening these libraries during the day on a limited basis, but in the late afternoon and early evening, we would be opening that for community use. And it could be training purposes, it could be entrepreneurial exploration, it could be job applications and training. So we talked about those possibilities today. The Redevelopment Commission accepted our proposal and tabled that. They didn't approve it. But this was our first opportunity to talk about it, and they've scheduled another session with us to talk further before the next meeting comes up next month. I appreciate the team effort. I hope you realize that Rob Tidrow and Karen Scalf, Karen especially, the two of them worked very, very diligently on helping me put this together, and I appreciate the media specialists who came out to be there if questions came up. And I think one or two questions did come up, and it was great to have them.
It was a good day. So we'll just hope that the Redevelopment Commission thinks it's a wonderful opportunity for our community. Anybody else from the board have any celebrations or reflections?
It's probably not quite a celebration yet, but I've seen a lot of activity over at the track, so I just wondered how all that was going.
Ron, would you like to comment on how the track is coming along?
Asphalt is all completed. And starting Monday, they're going to start putting the track surface down, and within the next 2 to 3 weeks, they will be done.
Okay. That is a celebration.
It's worth celebrating. We've come a long distance.
Okay. We are now at our public commentary point in our meeting. Is anyone from the public?
We do have Kelly McDermott.
Kelly, welcome.
First, let me apologize for my informal attire. I mean no disrespect, but I was in Indianapolis picking up a dog who had surgery all day, and my trip back took longer than I thought, so I had no time to go home and change. But I did want to take this opportunity. As of June the 15th, I assumed the position of REA president, and as part of that, I will be representing the teachers of the Richmond Community Schools in various fashions and in different duties, I suppose, from bargaining to discussion and elsewhere. And as the new REA president, I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce myself to you, though I think I know everybody at the table, but in my new duty, but also to say that I really am looking forward to working with everyone here. And I do know that every person seated at this table and on behalf of all the teachers of Richmond Community Schools, our goal is what was clearly stated in the mission statement that was read at the beginning of this meeting, that we want to help Richmond Community Schools to become the best public school in the state of Indiana, or school system, and to provide high-quality education for our young people. and hopefully to retain them here in Richmond, Indiana, so that this community can have a high quality of life, or the high quality of life that it has had in the past and that it deserves. I spoke with Dr. Borf yesterday, and one of the things we discussed was all of the amazing opportunities that are available here in Richmond, and for a community this size, from the art museum to the historical museum to the universities and the symphony orchestra and the Depot District. There's a lot of exciting things going on in Richmond, and certainly many of those involve teachers from this community in entrepreneurship, and in being customers and clients of those businesses. And as such, I think that teachers are the backbone of most communities that they live in. And so as the president of the Richmond Education Association, I just wanted to say that I look forward to working with you all, and I'm sure I will be seeing you soon. And again, I apologize, but hopefully the next time you see me, I will be a little more appropriately attired for a board meeting. So thank you.
Kelly, thank you, and that feeling is mutual. We are looking forward to relationship with you and to work alongside you.
Thank you very much.
And all the teachers.
Thank you.
Aaron.
I know we normally do not comment during public commentary, but I just want to say thank you for assuming the position or accepting the position. I know there will probably some times that maybe there will be maybe a give and take going on between you as the director of REA or the president and maybe the board and everything else. But one thing I really know, and that is that you bring a strong leadership, and you bring about a quality of leadership that I think we will all benefit from. We've always stated that strong leadership with the REA makes a strong REA. Strong REA makes Richmond Community Schools that much stronger, and I'm looking forward to that, Kelly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's very kind. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we are ready for our consent items.
Before I recommend the consent items, Mr. Millis has a correction to the minutes that he would like to recommend before we recommend that they be approved.
Yes, thank you. At our last meeting, we went over the proposals for book fees, and I did note a correction to the language arts and reading at 5th and 6th grade, and those should read $21.12 at both 5th and 6th grade, and I think the minutes need to reflect that so that it's on the record.
With that, I'll go forward. I would recommend approval of the minutes based on that correction. Also, a recommendation from Human Resources, which includes an addendum as posted to the web, recommendation from Accounts Payable, and also a recommendation for the filing of reports, and this one being the monthly financial report.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Susie Hively. Comments or questions?
You do have a new teacher out in the audience who's being recommended for hiring.
Come forth.
And his principal. Mrs. Gibbs, would you like to do the introduction?
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Logan Goodwin, and he will be coming to join the Logos team. He is a social studies teacher, and we needed that to round out our team, and very impressive young man, and it's my pleasure to present him to you this evening.
Good evening, Logan.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm originally from southern Indiana, a little town called Pekin. It's about a half hour north of Louisville, Kentucky. So,
East Washington.
yeah, that's where I went to school, actually. I went to Earlham for my undergrad and through the MAT program. I just graduated from there this past May 10th. And I'm excited for the opportunity to work at Hibbard and for this corporation.
Have you had an opportunity to meet the teachers, to work with them prior to at this point? through your
Yes,
program?
I've met everybody with the Logos program at this point.
Okay. And if you recall, Mrs. Klinge retired, so there was a position there, and I don't know if is he assigned some of the same types of classes that Mrs. Klinge had, or is this a different configuration?
It'll be that he'll teach humanities.
Okay.
And he'll, in a way, he's replacing Joe Hellrung, because Joe was really the social studies emphasis there, and then, so I think it'll balance out our team. And I would like to say that this is the first time in a long time that I've actually hired outside the district, and it's such a privilege to be here with, we had IU East candidates, we had Earlham candidates, and it was an extremely difficult, it was a very competitive process, and we feel very grateful that Logan is willing. He comes very highly recommended from the MAT folks at Earlham, and we're just really glad that he'll be joining us.
Well, thanks for accepting the offer, and we appreciate your being here tonight, but we look forward to working with you in this next year.
Did you do your experience at Hibbard Building?
At Hagerstown.
In Hagerstown?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That explains the purple.
And Eastern back home was purple too, purple and
Okay.
gold. So that was an easy transition into.
So now we're going to have to make that red.
Welcome,
Yeah.
and we'll figure out a way to get you in red.
There are a lot of places in Richmond that sell red.
I'm sure I'll be able to find something.
If not, we'll make sure you.
Paycheck.
That's right.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Logan.
Well, once we vote, welcome.
Yes, that's right.
Dr. Gorf, if I might add, in addition to Logan, at this point right now, tonight at this time, we have hired 29 new teachers.
Holy moly.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow, wow. That's crazy.
Okay.
Logan, do you want to wait for the vote?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion
Welcome.
carried, and Logan is hired.
Logan's official.
Red.
Okay, we are now ready for reports, discussion topics.
The first report, which is the annual report to the community, is actually a news item. I'm simply wanting to make sure that everybody here listening or watching tonight realizes that we have the State of the Schools report, which will be given at Hibbard cafeteria next Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. There is reserved seating, but there are plenty of seats available, last I heard. We have about 60, 70, something like that, but we have more capacity than that. We will be giving out the report in paper form, which is being printed right now, but there will also be a presentation, and we will be citing a lot of good things that happened during this last school year. So
And it's a nice breakfast.
it's a great breakfast
So-
put on by our own food services department.
Just a small technical question. When you put in that reservation, should you receive a confirmation back from?
I did.
Well, okay. I don't think I did, so I'll have to double check with somebody to
When
make
did
sure.
you submit yours?
Oh, the end of last week.
Okay, that should.
But I was also, I don't know whether international computing makes it harder, but I was.
Were you in Prague? I mean, that could have been a problem.
Could have been it. I don't know.
Check your junk mail.
Oh, there's a thought. Yeah.
That's probably what it
Okay.
Like, when I did mine, it, responded right away.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure I have a seat.
We'll make sure you have a seat.
Thanks.
The next item is the Effective Governance Award, and that's an opportunity for the board. And Mrs. Morganson, are you ready to talk about that?
Well, we had a retreat with Michael Adamson, who is one of our Indiana School Board Association representatives that works with us in retreats. And this is a new award that the ISBA is giving out. And Anyway, as he was working with us, he suggested that perhaps we might want to look into this award. And there is quite a bit to making. We have to make a portfolio, and we have to obviously show what we do as a board and why we should indeed receive this award. One of the first things that we have to do to qualify is board members are given points for attendance in different association meetings and conferences and so forth. And so all board members have to have at least be at level 1, which is 75 points. And I called to check on that, and we are on track for all 7 of us to be at about 75 points. Even our newest member is on track for that 75 points. So that has to happen, first of all, before we could even consider applying for this award. So anyway, we have to do like a board self-assessment, which we've already done, board retreat, which we have board retreats. We have to have corporation goals, which we've been working on. We have to be committed to student achievement, which we are. And we have to have evidence of boards continuing education. And we have to have evidence of our annual superintendent's evaluation, and also adoption of a board compact or code of ethics. So those are the categories which our portfolio will be built upon. So I just thought that we should bring this forward and have a conversation and see if the rest of you feel that we should also, the portfolio is has to be turned in by December 31st of this year. So anyway, it's open for discussion. Aaron.
I like this because unlike the other existing board goals that you could get, the exemplary or the master board, those basically deal a lot with just show up and the points that you get for those.
And that's the reason they developed
this.
this.
Yeah, this is evidence of a board that works, a board that has focus, and a board that has a vision, a continuous vision, and working toward that with effort. And that's why really the effective governance speaks for itself, and that's why I like this more so than some of the other board opportunities.
Anybody else?
Well, so every board member has to have the 75 points by the end of this year?
Mm-hmm. And everybody does. Susie's real close to that. But everybody, because I called and checked. So everybody else is already there. No pressure. No pressure.
I think I'm signed up for things in the summer.
You are.
Question. You were talking about individually board members participating in things. I have to participate in 2 national conference calls because of my regional position. How do we account for that?
You know, on the CAP, they spell out how many points different, and they keep track of it. If you
I'm really not worried about the points. I just wonder
you
how
have
that
like
go
500 and some. I mean,
I wasn't worried about the points necessarily. Just wanted to make sure that if that helps with us as a board collectively getting that, I need to get a hold of them because that's twice a month, 12 times.
Actually, the CAP, the level 1 is individual. It's not as a board. It's an individual accomplishment.
It seems to me it's very, it's a vote of confidence to have someone suggest to us that we should submit our application. And knowing and having a huge amount of confidence in the fact that we have the portfolio queen on our board, I would be glad to pitch in and help with that, but I know that if anyone can put a portfolio together, it's Dixie Robinson, so.
Oh, now
Well, effective governance is our goal, clearly, so it's nice to have an accountability. I mean, this is sort of proves it, I guess, and now we know what effective governance should look like.
Well, and we ought to be able to learn from it, because if there's an
Agreed.
area in here that we
we're maybe
feel
not-
like, when we look at it, we think, maybe we could be a bit stronger there, it'll guide our own performance.
I agree.
Well, and I think one of the things that I like about it is because we have our expectations for faculty, for students, for our school system, so we need to lead by example.
I agree.
So how is it that we should, it sounds as though that we have everyone in agreement. So how should we move?
Well, you could, just by vote, make a decision to move forward on this, or you can appoint a small committee to start moving to put it together and approve the application when the time comes to do so.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'd be glad to help with that process in any way that would be useful to the board.
I guess I'm supposed to say, okay.
You volunteered.
You know what, actually, thank you for the offer, and we will count on you, and we will count on you, and anyone who would like to, Suzanne, anyone who would like to participate, when you guys, will put you as co-chairs, and when you decide to meet, then just let people know, and if people want to join in, then the more the merrier.
I think if it's a matter of, because some of this is just a matter of collecting.
Exactly.
And if that's the case, assign us each to a
Yeah, we
job,
can
and
just-
that would make it very
everybody
much
can help.
easier on all.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, but we'll count on you two to organize us as a board, okay?
Done.
Thank you. Thank you, that's great.
It's 2 more points for you.
You think? I don't know whether it counts.
You're getting closer by the minute here.
You know, before we move on from that, you were talking about this coming out of your meeting, your evaluation retreat with Mr. Adams, Dr. Adamson. It should be noted, in that meeting, he said that this was the first board he's ever worked with that reviewed, adopted a new vision, mission statement one year, became disenchanted with it, and took the initiative to go through the process all over again and re-adopt. He said it's the first time he's ever seen that happen. So he didn't spend much time critiquing this board. He spent more time validating the good work it's been doing. So kudos to all the board members. It was a nice session, very nice session. Well, the next section, which has to do with board goals, also requires some board discussion. And I have a quick PowerPoint for this one. We'll take each one as it goes. At the last meeting, if you recall, there was a committee assigned to working with one another to develop some goal statements. And we had a facilitator, Dr. Ramondi, who came into the boardroom, worked with the board, facilitated a process, and developed several different areas of board concern. Out of that, this small committee that came together last week developed 3 goals. And it's their recommendation that the board consider these 3 goals for adoption. They're not necessarily up for approval tonight, but for conversation. However, they could also be accepted tonight formally by the board if you see fit for that. Goal 1 is that Richmond Community Schools will increase opportunities for student and stakeholder engagement. Now, what we're trying to do, what the administration came together to do, was provide some indicators of what success or progress toward goal attainment would look like. This is not necessarily an exhaustive list of indicators. It's an example of what could be done. Now, when you're talking about student and stakeholder engagement, you're talking about participation, you're also talking about ownership, but you're talking about that at various levels. So you'll see in these indicators, there are measurables. Some are not so measurable. Some are indication, just plain indicators of progress. Student participation in extracurricular activities. Every year we report how many students are involved in sports or athletics. We have those figures throughout the buildings on participation in extracurricular events, which have to do with academics as well as athletics. Before and after school programming was one idea that we talked about. We have many sign-in sheets for before and after school activities. This could speak to students, but it also speaks to adult participation. We keep records of adult participation at many of our after and before school events. In school-sponsored activities, see, the parent participation numbers and rates could be made available, which would be an indicator. It's not necessarily proof that engagement takes place. It's an indicator, and I think that's the important piece you have to recognize. What our thought is that in total, the indicators might come together to show you whether we're achieving or not, and if we're not, at what level are we achieving. Identification of technology programs most frequently used in academic disciplines. That by itself would tell you very little about engagement, but it's one measure that, with the others, could paint the picture of what engagement is taking place. Service learning data, we keep consistently year to year, building to building, and almost every student body participates in service learning to a point. Internships and mentorships are kept that data is kept very, very precisely for a lot of different reasons, but it certainly would be available for a picture of student engagement. So I can't tell you, this happened, what was it? We came together last Wednesday or Thursday. More conversation needs to take place on the indicators, but I wanted to give you a glimpse of what this could look like. Goal 1, Richmond Community Schools will increase opportunities for student and stakeholder engagement, was one of the items coming out of the data that you generated yourselves in the retreat with Dr. Raimondi.
So how do you see the things that you listed, the activities or whatever you want to call them listed, as increasing opportunities?
Well, increasing opportunities would require us to show you what baseline data we're assessing against, and we keep a lot of that. Many of these items are not new items. Many of those items have baseline data attached to them. In some cases where we're adopting a new practice, it may have to be new baseline data, showing that we're now watching and we're encouraging, and this is how. If you remember our strategic plan, we have strategies in the strategic plan, and we talk about whose responsibility it is, how we're assessing progress, and that's where on a quarterly basis we come together and we talk about that and show you what progress we're making. If something isn't working, we generally know by the first CPAS meeting, which is where those are not quarterly, those are 3 times a year. We generally know, and we change directions or adjust in order to ramp up the quality of effort or the results. So, yeah, some of these have baseline data. That's how we would be able to talk about engagement. But remember, engagement in some cases looks nothing like a quantifiable item. You know, you have some items of engagement that we would probably use anecdotally. We could talk about what engagement looks like and what we're seeing in particular classrooms or particular areas of improvement focus. So some of what we would be talking about would also be anecdotal.
I just wanted to make sure that we push ourselves to increase that engagement. And so I guess that's what my question was leading to is how are we going to push to make sure that we are, because obviously this goal is here for a reason. And so I just want to make sure that we're pushing ourselves to increase that student engagement in whatever way that we do it.
Well, and a lot of these goals we fine-tune when the teachers return, and we're able to have discussion on each and every one of them. And what you see here may be tweaked in major ways after input is conducted. And because this was a very brief turnaround time on presenting here at the board meeting tonight, I cannot tell you that the cabinet members have had adequate time to really have deep conversations on these. This was more of a general brainstorming, and so that's what you're going to be seeing tonight.
Well, I get you. Go ahead.
Sorry. The one thing I think is perhaps easy to do, because I know we collect that data with the parent surveys, is that percentage of parents who feel welcomed and
that's right.
And in the schools, and I think that would be we've collected that for a long time, so that would be a useful one, I think, to add. And the only concern I have in looking at this is, at some point, I'd like to know which of these things are new data points, or which of these, because I don't want to, in our effort to collect information, create more work for, particularly at the classroom level, for people. I would like this to be, because we already collect the information and it's there, as much as possible, because I want to be sensitive to the burden it puts on people when we start collecting new information.
And we appreciate that.
Jeff?
Well, I just want to expand a little bit more on, when I see the term or the word increase, and we use these types of indicators, I guess baseline data this year compared to the data that we get next year may increase or decrease or stay status quo. But I guess what I would be interested in, what did we do different to increase that? And some things may not be necessarily measurable, but how would we know when you set your indicators up, and how do we know that you did something different, or you tried a different approach, or you tried to how do we know something was different?
Well, we provide opportunities for you to look at our strategies. I mean, the strategies are there, and they either work or they don't. And if they're not working, we change them. And if you would look at some of our outcomes are going to be similar. We're going to be looking at some outcomes that are very similar to what we've had this year. If you were to compare this year's strategic plan against next year's strategic plan, you're going to see some common features. That's also where you're going to see different strategies. Some of the strategies though are proven. They're good, and we'll simply work to make them better or more effective. Perhaps we'll be integrating them into more schools. I don't have any one practice right off that's only happening at a couple schools, but if they're effective practices at 2 schools, we'll probably be looking at, well, no, I do have one. Kelly Andrews at Charles uses an honor society. We're still looking at that to see if that's a strategy for engagement of students in the community. If that works, we may look at moving that into other buildings. That's a strategy that you probably wouldn't see change, but it could be expanded. So that in itself is a change. And yes, we do look at that.
Well, for instance, like on student participation in extracurricular, you know, we know that we have a large group of our students who are engaged in extracurricular. But so I guess what I would like to see is that perhaps a specific, maybe a specific group of students are identified who may not be participating in extracurricular, and then challenge us to help them to become participants.
Sure.
So, you know, and that's the work that you have yet to do.
That's
So.
right. Yeah, these are just sample indicators, but it's one way that you might see that measured. The second goal has to do with student achievement. Actually, it's student growth through measures of academic, social, physical, and emotional successes. We might want to think about putting the terms social and emotional together. They tend to go together, and we've separated those. I don't know if that was intentional as I think back, or if that's just the way it turned out. But the academic, the social, the physical, and the emotional successes are measurable by a number of ways. Some of these look very, very familiar. Gains in percentage of students passing the English language arts and math portions of the I-STEP are going to be assessed. They are going to be gauged. We don't really have much to do with that. That's expected. The state expects that, and so does the federal government.
I would like to
Indicating
point
that.
out that the assessment that we take in the spring will not look a thing like things that we've taken in the past, and the one we take in 2015 won't look a thing like what we take in 2016. So we're going to have a couple years here where we're not sure what we're comparing ourselves against.
But if you're looking at something new and different, you've got it. We have benchmark assessments that are the internal measures throughout the year, and we share those at I-STEP or at CPAS times. And we very consistently look at those to see if there are any mid-flight corrections we need to make through the year where our strategies would change. The graduation rate, student attendance, RTI. And when I said RTI, I'm not looking at necessarily the outcomes, but the trends. Because sometimes our trends tell us to change our approach. And I think that's one of the things you're talking about. Do we work with our programs as the situations change, as the end results warrant that? Daily time dedicated to student physical activity is something that we probably have not assessed as much as we need to, but there are reasons we need to be attentive to that. This could be one of those indicators of success. If you recall, a few years ago we had Warriors in our building, and this was for cultural competency. We have a lot of new teachers, some new principals, and the schools look very different from when they were last given the Warriors. And for the people who are listening, what that Warrior designation was, it's simply a play on words. These are cultural competencies that we're talking about. And instead of warriors in our building to carry forward the idea of moving in this war against cultural incompetence, we have warriors who stand ready in our staffs, watching building level decisions, practices, textbook or curriculum uses, and they're looking for ways that we might better approach diversity and with respect to cultural differences. Maybe it's time to activate that again with the bullying conversations that we've had, and that's also another whole data set that we collect. The activation of the building level warriors might be a time to do that. That brings with it lots of measurable pieces that we could talk about. I think the last time we had the warriors, didn't they meet over at Baxter about once a month? They came together. That's something we may want to resurrect. Health service referral data is available. I don't know that we share that with the board as any indicator of success, but as student health becomes a greater and greater concern, that's something that we need to be looking at. We've talked about the whole child, but student health indicators are generally not something that we report out on this CPAS data that comes 3 times a year. And then the behavior referral data may be a little specific there because behavior is a much broader term than just referrals. We have the referral data, but behavior goes well beyond that, and we've talked about ways of measuring impact on behavior issues, student discipline, without necessarily looking at how many times were they sent to the office. That was Mr. Millis's suggestion that we change that term. Didn't make it in time for press. So these are indicators again, and there are more. Any questions on those? Those are probably the most familiar that we have here. Maximizing resources to provide the highest quality educational opportunities for students in Wayne County. It's a great goal. We talked about that for a long time in our session. Maintenance of a balanced budget is a tradition here. That pretty much has specified how we hope to maximize our resources, because a balanced budget, while it may be painful during the budget years, provides security for programming in subsequent years. But maintenance of the balanced budget, the progress in the digital conversion, which brings in your technology piece, results of the energy savings project, designed to bring money back into the system from our maintenance staff. Field trip data, we don't necessarily put together, but we spend a lot of resources in terms of transportation dollars as well as staff dollars and student instructional time. We spend a lot of time on that, and we talk about what we're hoping to reap from those field trips that we take, but we don't report back. We don't really collect that to show that we're maximizing our resources for a specific purpose. That was one of the pieces that we talked about, a little different from what we've been doing. Partnerships, we have over 100 of those partnerships. We talked about that today with the Redevelopment Commission. What's the outcome of those partnerships? How is that maximizing resources? Increase in teacher attendance, we talk about that many times. As teachers as teachers move forward with us in this process, a lot of times their attendance or their absences are because of requests that we've made of them. How do we maximize their attendance and get some of what we need accomplished? Professional development, conference attendance, sometimes that happens, and we're the culprits for that. I shouldn't say culprits, because a lot of times what they're doing is very, very good and important, but it does cause attendance issues, and we need to be looking at maximizing our resources to get the job done. Professional growth data we looked at in the past by just showing how many points teachers are receiving. Maybe it's time that we do something really kind of anecdotal and I don't know, out of the box. I don't know how many times I've ever taken a board member with me to experience a staff development experience at one of the buildings. They're fantastic experiences. And while I know that can be a touchy subject, even my attendance at some of those staff development meetings can be distracting. Maybe that's something that we want to think about. That's a way that you bring qualitative data to the board level. Can't measure some of those impacts, but you can certainly sense it when it's happening. So 3 basic goals. As you can see by what I've talked about, it doesn't mean that we're any less busy because we have fewer goals. I think that our strategic plan would reflect that this could be as ambitious, if not more, than what we've been doing, but it would be much more focused at the three goal level. So At this point, I turn it over to the board members to talk among yourselves about it.
Well, one of the things that I would like to say is that throughout our visioning process, our developing our mission, and developing then our goals, we really listened to what people were saying about the amount of testing and using so much testing data that consumed us, and it was like it's what defined us, but we didn't think it really did define us. And so we really have worked hard to do our goals in a way to state what does define us, and it is inclusive of, certainly inclusive of lots of data and testing and so forth, but it's also very inclusive of working with the whole child and to hopefully get us closer to our vision and mission. So I know that it's been a process, a long process, and we've had lots of input, and sometimes people think that we don't always listen, but I think we did listen, and we have worked hard on our beliefs and tried to represent those beliefs in our goals. So with that said, comments from board members?
Well, the one thing that I like that we have done after looking at last year's vision and mission and so forth is that the ones we have now, the vision, the mission, the belief statements, are all centered, and the board goals are all centered around students. It's not data, it's not tests, it's centered around students. So I like that.
Anybody else?
Well, I'm comfortable with the board goals, even, and other than you might
Then
want to
let's
talk.
hurry up and vote.
You know, whether you want to combine social and emotional or not, but because I think the real meat of it is going to be their indicators and their measurements and how the administration comes back to us. So, I mean, these are, I think this gives them the steps to move forward.
So are you suggesting to strike either the social or emotional, or somehow put those together? Or
Together. I wouldn't strike either of them, but I would simply put them together in that list so that it reads
Okay.
academic, social, emotional, and
Okay.
physical success.
Okay. Okay. So, anybody else? So what's your pleasure, board?
We will, when will we approve the indicators?
You won't necessarily approve the indicators, but we want to bring them back to you so that you can see, and we need your input on
Well,
those.
because I think that's where our discussion really, I'm for approving the goals tonight and passing it on to the administration, so.
Well, I was wondering if we approve them tonight, and then maybe at our next meeting, we could have some conversation at the board level, because I always hate for you to, you and the administrators to do their work and then come to us, and then we have suggestions. So if we could be kind of proactive there and give our input before you get your work completely finished.
We will, tell me, so you would be actually approving the goals tonight, but you don't want us to move forward on that?
No, we want you to move forward, I believe, but if you truly want our input on maybe some things that we would like to also see, or do you want to do that after you talk amongst?
I'd like to, once you approve the goals, I would like to put the strategies together to get to these goals.
Okay.
And bring you in on those conversations as they're being developed.
Okay.
And I don't think the next board meeting is too soon for that.
Okay.
I think we could begin talking about that.
Does that sound good to everybody?
That's fine.
I so moved then.
Second.
Okay, comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
We have some goals.
The next item we have for conversation has to do with a situation at C.R. Richardson. Just a reminder, not that the board needs it, but C.R. Richardson is a building that we have a special leasing arrangement with, and the Excel Center is there, and so is the YMCA. Throughout the course of this last year, we have served many, many clients who also are smokers. And while we don't necessarily talk about smoking at the board level very often, tonight's a night, because it has been an issue for our neighborhood. And I will just go on record as saying I've talked to a few residents in the area, and some of them have questioned the good neighbor we are by not providing options for these people who, in pretty significant numbers, have to break out and smoke somewhere on the curbs. Some have gone as far as going across the street. It can be unsightly, and the neighbors have asked us if we could come to some kind of a resolution or at least address this. Well, as you know, we don't allow smoking on school property, and that is school property. So what we have done in some of our policy review, we've asked Mr. Cross to look at this issue and see if there's a way that we could address it by perhaps carving out a specific place on one of our properties where we would actually condone smoking or permit it. And that's what you have before you. You have a limited waiver of policy resolution, or board policy 7434, and it would create a spot at C.R. Richardson building, outside the building, for people to be able to smoke and not be in violation of our board policy. Now, there are pros and cons with this, obviously. I just talked to you about health, the well-being of our students. These people are not necessarily our students, but they may be visible to young people in the area. We also have issues of, where does this take place? And there are 3 locations that I would suggest we consider as we think about this. One location would be the front of the building. The front of the building has been landscaped. It has a patio out there with tables, and there's shrubbery around there. There are actual visible physical barriers between the patio and the street. I suppose that would be one logical place to allow smoking to occur. You also, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, is that entrance used by either the Y or Excel?
I don't believe that Excel uses that. They use a south side entrance. That entrance used to go out to the playground.
Okay.
The north side entrance is not used. It really has become kind of the back door of the building. I realize that sounds like an odd thing because that's the physical front of the building, but it's being used as sort of a back door right now.
We're talking about South J Street.
J Street entrance. In fact, if you go along J Street right now, you'll find the trash bin that used to be on the playground, or not the playground, the parking lot. You'll find that, it's the dumpster, out in front of the building. Because that has become kind of the
back of the building.
The utility of the building, utility side of the building. Where is the Excel sign? the Excel sign is on the south side. People traveling down L Street think of that as the front of the building almost now. The YMCA has an east side entrance. I've told you about the one area that we might consider for, if we're looking at an area for smokers. The second area would be on the south side of the building at that entrance. There could be a partition constructed. My concern with that is it is close to the playground. And even with the best barriers, it's still close to the playground. And we do have young kids playing on that many times through the day.
And the Y uses it too for the students that
You mean the playground
Yes,
area?
right.
Yes, it's open to them for their use. We have Kevin Carr here tonight who could talk to you about actual use, but we also have an area that's down on the north side, west side of the building, and that's the second level, the lower level. That's actually under roof. I mean, there's like a little canopy that extends by virtue of the construction of the building. That area, which is cemented concrete area, could be another location. One problem with that is that that's an area, that's an entrance that can be used for coming and going for the daycare program that we have. And as we look beyond at further partnerships, we've also talked about other partners such as CIS, Birth to Five. Those have been conversations. That would be their main entrance.
Well, it's kind of remote also.
It is
I mean,
remote.
it's not convenient.
So as we size those three locations up, if you're going to look at this as a possibility that you would like to pursue, my recommendation is that we look at that patio area outside the former front doors of the building. So with that conversation.
Aaron.
Question one, have we canvassed the neighbors on South J Street to get their feedback in regards to the potential of having the smoking area there? Because again, all we'd be doing is basically moving 30 people standing in the grass from South 13th Street over to J Street. Have we canvassed them? Second question is, if we have it there and it's in that area, my concern, Mr. Carr, would be some of that smoke would again potentially be coming back through that door, which leads directly into the YMCA's facility, which would be just very close to the weight room and that area where working out is being done. And you know, potentially, if you're on the treadmill or you're lifting weights or something, if you're being inundated with smoke that's coming in, it detracts from that. And I'm concerned about Mr. Carr and the YMCA losing maybe potential membership because, you know, the unhealthy environment that it may cause.
How would the smoke get in?
If they had the windows open, it would be.
Well, but
even the air intake.
they're not supposed to have the windows open.
Air
intake.
It could be an issue.
The
Could
univent
be.
intake. I don't know if there are univents there, but whatever, there's a fresh air intake in those buildings.
I also want you to be aware, and Mr. Carr could speak to this better than I can, but it's not anyone's desire to promote an unhealthy practice, and the YMCA especially. The YMCA has every intention of partnering with Reed to create smoking cessation classes for the people who find it necessary to go out there and smoke, should this become a possibility. I don't think there are any ideal places.
There's not.
There's not.
There is not. And you know, in the give and take of it all, the effect, the smoking is just one of those aspects, but you look at the effectiveness of Excel Center, and I'm speaking from a community standpoint, and that is the fact that you're getting people who otherwise have not had an opportunity to complete their education or did not take the opportunity to complete their education. And if the Excel Center is the conduit for them to attaining their high school diploma, the smoking aspect is just a small part, because I'd hate to think that if we don't do it, that they're going to say, I can't smoke, I'm not going to go, and I'm not going to participate. But you're right, there's no ideal location there.
The other thing that came to my mind is I've had to, in the past, deal with this issue in the adult education program. And we gave them coffee cans and told them to take them outside off school property and take care of their trash. And, you know, I mean, there are ways of doing it so that if they do have time to take a break, that they can be, you say, you know, and if you create a problem in the neighborhood, then we won't be taking breaks because, you know, I don't know, I think it's really hard to create an area where there's smoking allowed on one piece of school property, and then, I don't know, there could be, I just...
To address that, they do have a spot where they do, off the grounds of the school, and they have a couple ashtray situations there, but it is in the main parking area where the Y comes in and the Excel, so, and that's on that east side of the building there, so they do have those areas where they do
So it's still on
smoke.
school property?
It's off the sidewalk, but it's still visible from, right. It's not across the road, it's on the road, but off
It's
the property.
technically not on school
technically,
property,
so-
though, probably, because it's the sidewalk, is that?
Correct, so, and they do police that area, but technically they're off the school property, but that's what we're trying to eliminate, is kind of that. as
Does
people
the
drive-
city
Thinking if
allow
they went to
smoking on the
Ivy
sidewalk?
Tech, if they went to IU East, if they went, if they went to Earlham, if any place that they would go to take post-secondary coursework, smoking's not allowed. And I don't see why we would allow it.
And I have a concern in the message that we send as a school system. And what door are we opening down the road? And I know that there is a problem with the smoking. I appreciate the neighbors' concerns. But these people are going to school to get a diploma, to get a job. And when they get the job, they can't smoke on the job, for the most part either. So there's so many places now that you can. It's basically now pretty much in the privacy of your own home. So, or car. So, I don't know, I'm struggling with this.
I guess I kind of look at it a little differently. I hate having a rule that says you can't smoke, but then you turn your blind eye and you let them smoke. You know, what are you going to do? We've tried for all year long to have them abide by the smoking rule. Now, I don't know. I was kind of, when the idea first come up, I was kind of hoping that there would be some place that we could build a little shelter, or Excel could build a little shelter that was away from the building. You know, if it has to be down by the football field, something that something that moves them well away from the building. I have concern putting it right on the patio of the front door. I don't know that I would like that idea, and I don't like the idea of putting it over in front of the playground either. So, so that leaves going towards the football field. Is that conducive? I don't know. But
Well, I think if you made it inconvenient for them, they would simply go where they do now.
Yeah.
And the situation
and that's
wouldn't
true,
change.
and that would happen.
Is the Excel, this isn't the only site. Are we the only site that's on a school property where they aren't allowed to smoke, or has this?
I couldn't answer that.
I'm just curious, because this can't be the first time they've approached this
No,
problem.
there's one
and-
in Indianapolis that's with a school, right?
And it's the, they knew it was non-smoking when we started, right?
Mhm.
Now, the city of Richmond, do they allow smoking on the site? I know Wayne County, you're not allowed smoking on any Wayne County property. Are you allowed to smoke on city property?
I don't believe so.
I don't know that there's, I can't answer that. I do know that the
County,
students
for sure.
have been pretty,
Ask a smoker.
they've been pretty diligent about going out there beyond the sidewalk.
Well, I was going to say, even if they're smoking on the sidewalk, they're still breaking. I'm assuming they're.
No, I don't think so. I think that's just campus
Do
property.
you know,
so the
Ron,
county
if,
property.
if people are allowed to smoke on city property?
I don't know.
And I think even the county is the county campus, like it's county, I don't think it's sidewalks and stuff, I think it's the county courthouse, it's the Department of Transportation, any buildings owned by the county.
It's just the environs of the campus. It doesn't, I mean, you can go drive by and see people smoking on the sidewalks.
Right, I don't think I think it's just the campus.
Well, I guess also, I'm concerned that we designate a spot, but they may still gravitate to the
'Cause it's
spot
too
that they use
full
now.
or whatever, yeah.
I mean,
On the other side of the coin, that building is being leased out to other private nonprofit organizations, right? It's not school activity there, and if it's impeding their ability to do business, we're not setting a precedent for school use property necessarily because it's not school use property. It's being used for another piece of business. So I guess I can see that
So
point of
did
view
this
as well.
request come from neighbors or from the Excel Center itself? Or where, I mean, where, I guess I'm not sure about the
Well, it
origins.
has come from neighbors.
All of the above, I think.
Yeah, all of the above. And it's, as we were doing our policy work in the 7000s, that's where it became obvious we don't address this in a way that answers the problem. So this is where we turned it over. We had a little conversation about that, and it's led to this. You'll notice, contrary to what might have been in the newspaper, this is not up for a vote tonight. We're not asking for a vote. We're just asking for conversation. We do have Mr. Carr here. I think it might be interesting to hear what he has to say.
agree.
He's in charge of one of the organizations in that building, and I don't know exactly how he has discussed the subject with his clients, but I know he has a position on it.
I like that we're having this conversation. I like it a lot. I do not like people smoking. I don't like people putting bad toxins into their body. That's not part of what I do. But I recognize there's a right of adults to make decisions. And right now, where these adults are making a decision to smoke is really, it looks bad. It doesn't help us grow. I don't think it helps the Excel Center grow. I really don't like that our kids during our summer camp are out on the fields watching people smoke. I don't like that our parents are bringing their kids into a safe place in a crowd of 30 people smoking. So I think it's a good conversation to have. I'm in full support of moving it. And really the Excel Center is too. I talked with them today, and right now we're trying to put together a proposal to give you what would be in the best interest of both of us. In our talks, the best interest of both of us is moving out to that patio. My concern is a lot like Aaron's, that if the door's open, smoke comes through, I don't want the Y smelling like an ashtray. And our windows sometimes are opened into that, what's our fitness center, the old kindergarten classroom that's right outside the old main front entrance. They're open sometimes just because it gets hot in there. I don't think the air conditioner is really built for a fitness center. So it's good to get that fresh air in. The good thing is that patio, and especially where the picnic tables are, they're more than 20 feet away from the entrance, which is good. So when we started our conversation, I started looking at higher education places as well. And being an Earlham student, I know a lot of folks smoke on that campus. And it seems like the trend for higher education right now is they make designated smoking areas, that you're not allowed to smoke anywhere. There's fines associated with it. Law enforcement can be involved in whatever. But as long as you're inside this line, it works. And that's kind of the idea that we're going to. Also in our conversation, the Y and Excel is putting a kind of a use it and lose it policy. You have 90 days to make it work. If you don't, here's the rule. You can't smoke on school grounds. This is school grounds you're done, and that's it. I think that if we have that harsh punishment on it, I think it would work a little bit better. But again, I might be saying that selfishly because I'm coming from a place that's health and wellness and youth development and that, and this kind of goes against it.
Well, are you saying that there will be a recommendation from?
Well, I'll say today we made our first draft between myself and Erica Haskins at the Excel Center on putting something together that we'd like to present to you. I like that this discussion's happening. It's something that I think has been impeding us. I think it's something that they would like to clean up. The neighbors that complain a lot, and I don't want to say that we want to sweep dirt under the rug, but I think that patio out front has 2 walls that help hide. There's nice gardens with high plants that help hide, and again, it just it moves everything out from the new front doors where everyone stands right now. Everyone has to go through, which is a disadvantage to both organizations.
How many students would you say, a maximum number of students that might be smoking at one time?
A maximum at one time, we're probably talking 30, 40 folks, but that's at a high turnover rate. So during their...
Let's say average then.
Average, so they take about 4 smoke breaks a day. So it's in the middle of their classes, and then there's one at lunch. Lunch is the big one. At the beginning of the school year, they had a lot of students there, and that's where we had that probably 40, 45 folks. But average, we're 15, 20 people. It's still a big number of folks that are out there.
Well, that's what I'm trying to visualize is 20 smokers in that particular area.
And it's a small area, and we talk about aesthetics of the building. We're trying to really clean it up and be a leader in that neighborhood, setting an example of picking up your trash, throwing things away. That's kind of why we moved the trash bin away from where it was. That J Street is the road less traveled. It's not real high traffic, but L Street 13th gets quite a bit. So, yeah, trying to be a leader on it. That grassy area just over the sidewalk, because they do a really good job staying off the sidewalk, but they're doing a really good job at killing that grass. It's just a big dirt pile now. And they do have ashtrays that are trash cans, but the cigarette ends don't always find the way into there. So as we're mowing the grass now, you blow cotton all over the place from the filters of the unused cigarettes, which makes it a problem too, trying to maintain and keep the facility up and looking good.
I've gotten a couple calls from some neighbors, and it didn't sound as though they were trying to find a solution. They were wanting it stopped. And I'm kind of like Aaron. I'm concerned that we're just moving the problem. So we're moving the problem from 13th Street. Now the neighbors, the people on J Street are going to have to deal with this annoying habit.
But
And-
J Street won't be on the street. That
Right.
Well, we don't think.
Well, again, if you don't use it, you lose it. I mean,
Right. I think that's what we have to. If you're going to consider moving this and letting us smoke on school grounds, I think it should be very clear that if you don't take care of it, if you're not responsible enough to kill yourself by putting these toxins in your body, you should be responsible enough to clean it up and make sure you follow the policies that are in place. We're making an acceptance for you, so if you don't follow the rules, then it's done. We go back to the way it was.
Well,
Aaron.
if
My 4-year-old doesn't.
I never been a smoker, don't plan on ever being, and I have my personal preference on it. If it were going to be on that north patio, one of the stipulations that I would really love to see, and that was if I were going to support anything like this, it would be to ensure the neighbors and get the assurance from those students that if they are going to participate in that behavior, it's stayed up on the patio. not on the steps, not on the sidewalk, not on the curb curtilage or anything, because then we get back to the problem of South 13th Street. And I would just, if you've got to hide that, then keep it up on the patio. That would be my personal preference if I were going to support it in any sense.
Right.
Well, let me ask a question. If we don't do anything, how do we stop them? Do we have the right for...
police?
Yeah. Are we going to have Richmond City Police Department down there for every break to issue tickets? Are we going to kick them out of school? I'm just trying to be a devil's...
And that's a good devil's advocate.
Yeah, if we say we don't want to support smoking, which we don't want to support it, but if we don't want to provide some alternative avenue to try to solve the problem, then what's our hammer?
Well, I think our hammer would be simply, our existing policy, which is, there is no use of tobacco or smoking on school.
Again, how do we enforce
I thought I
it?
understood the problem to be the fact that they aren't smoking on school property. They're doing it on the sidewalks.
That's right.
And frustrating the neighbors because they're doing it either on or near their property.
That's correct.
So I don't think you have any clout.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good point.
I'm a little concerned, because I've been asked this question in the past. Well, where's the designated smoking area for the, I've been asked it when I've been in different buildings. Where can I have my, parents are coming in for a school program or something, where can I go have my cigarette? Well, I'm sorry, you can't. Well, now the answer would be, well, you let them smoke over at CR, where, why don't you have a place like that for me at this school?
Again, it's not a school right now.
Yeah, that would
That's
be
the
my
difference.
position too. This is a leased building for programs that are not school related.
But people still see.
It's a distinction that wouldn't
Still
be.
CR.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, on
we can't win
13th
either
Street, there, I don't know, the people that I've talked to, they don't live right there across. It is the eyesore, the fact that they are standing there smoking in the neighborhood. And it's not necessarily that the people live real close there. They may live a block down, but they feel that the property is being abused and that there has been trash, the littering, and so forth that has happened. So, Ron.
Well, with all due respect, I realize this is just enough for discussion, but I think as I contemplated it happening, I really didn't see the board determining where it was going to happen. All the board has to decide is whether or not it's willing to entertain a waiver and then direct the administration or the superintendent to develop guidelines that would allow it to be implemented. And the resolution does speak to the fact that there's to be conferring with there's some criteria. Implicit is that it's to have the minimal impact on the YMCA and its staff and its clientele. And then secondly, although we don't say so, if you could, if you have to address the first question of whether you're willing to consider this limited waiver. If you're not, then all these other points are moot.
Right.
If you are, I think trust your superintendent to develop the guidelines, and you might want to consider putting a sunset clause on it and say we're going to try this for 90 days and direct that the stakeholders, that would be XL, the Y, and the administration, come together and bring a recommendation to the board as to whether the waiver should be continued or discontinued. And that would allow Kevin and his group an opportunity for meaningful input and not waste their time if, in fact, you're not going to entertain the concept of a waiver in the first instance. So, I mean, I think you need to sequence your thoughts, and fundamentally, if you're not willing to entertain it, then I appreciate Kevin coming, but he and his group have kind of wasted their time.
Yeah.
I like the idea, actually, of you called it a sunset clause? I don't know what.
It's a cliche for laws that die of their own accord.
Okay. Well, I like putting in a death warrant into this.
Sunset's a little.
Sunset's
so much gentler, Susie.
Well, and I also wanted to say that I wanted to commend you on trying to partner with Excel and Reed Hospital with smoking cessation classes because I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah. We've got 30 to 35 people on average standing out there, and they're ready to listen to folks. They're not going to move. They have to stand next to that trash can. So
Maybe they'd have to have a attendance report from a smoking cessation class.
Again, it's not an illegal activity. So we have
Thanks,
to be-
Ron, for reeling it back
The
in.
sad thing is, and I think the data supports that the lower a person is, their educational attainment, and commensurate with that, their economic achievement, the more likely they are to engage in that type of self-abusive behavior for whatever the reasons. And so it's, it may be a process,
chicken and
baby
the egg
steps,
kind of
get that degree, and then become maybe a little more self-esteem that'll be inwardly focused. Who knows?
So is the plan to bring us a recommendation at the,
We could bring you a recommendation that has some of the items, the sunset clause that we're talking about. We could bring that at the next meeting.
okay, I think that
And it
would,
would be interesting to have a further proposal or thought from the Y as well as the Excel Center. as
Once
well.
again, though, all we have to say is whether we're willing to limited waiver. After that, they are the current leasers of the property, then they decide how to carry it out, right? I mean, aren't we overstepping by saying, well, we want it here?
It's hard to pass a policy and not also get into the
I
implementation.
know, but I'm saying
We
it's,
just
they're
did.
they're the owners of the building right now, and it's really not our job to do that. It's just to say whether we think that we can live with a limited waiver.
except we're the ones that get the complaints.
Understand?
Well, and
Well, they get them too. I know that.
What you don't appreciate is, as a former smoker who hasn't in 20-some years, it was very difficult to come up with those whereas recitals to justify. I had to really be creative and challenge myself.
I hear you.
We'll bring that back.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We appreciate your coming this evening and your input. Okay, we are ready for action items.
And our first action item has to do with the receipt of donations. I turn that over to Mrs. Scalp.
Okay, tonight we have quite a few donations. We have Vintage Wheels, who donated to the RHS Career Education Automotive Program. We've got many athletics donations for the high school and the intermediate program, and those came from the Indiana Officials Association, Mr. Roger Cornett, Contract Industrial Tooling, Paul Lingle, Contemporary Consulting, Inc., Mr. and Mrs. Robert Alexander, and Mr. and Mrs. Michael Ripperger, and Local 1073 UAW. At the Hibbard Building, we had a donation to the Thump Jumpers program from Sugar Valley United Methodist Women. We also had numerous donations to the Life Skills Playground project that they're working on, and that was from the Logos Speech and Drama students, Deborah Williams, Dr. and Mrs. Wambo and Olivia, Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Jackson and Lydia, and other student donations from the Lemonade Day proceeds. At Test, we had the Test Intermediate School PTO donated proceeds from their book fair for library equipment. West End Bank donated a field trip transportation cost for Charles Elementary. At Civic Hall, we have many donations for the Proudly Presenting series, and those are Elaine Barnes, Pete and Nancy Beeman, Jack and Barb Beelfus, Jean Burris, Bill Carter, Ron and Rhonda Christopher, CGY Olga Clarkson, Christina Clevenger, David and Kim DeSantis, Joe, Rachel, and Esther Etherington, Miriam Fisher, Lois E. Gessel, Eileen Giffens, Connie and Roger Green, Lonnie and Sherry Hart, Richard D. and Sally J. Harder, David and Sherry Jetmore, David and Ellen Johnson, John and Janet Kaufman, Paul and Pat Lingle, Michael Maines and Bobby Carter, David and Phyllis Marling, Eric and Loretta Tugel, Clarice M. Warwick, and Mr. and Mrs. Wayne Vincent. For the Community Partnership and Engagement Office, sponsoring the mentoring program, we have Bob and Sally Whitbroad, and we have a total donation this month of $6,989.69, and we say thank you to all of these donors for their support. So I ask that you accept these donations on behalf of Richmond Community Schools and the board.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Aaron Stevens makes a motion, Susie Hively seconds. Comments or questions? Thank you, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Our second item has to do with our consulting agreement with Mr. Mays. I'm recommending approval of the consulting agreement as posted on the web. If there are any questions, we are prepared to answer those. It is a slightly different contract than we've proposed in years past.
Okay, do I have a motion? Motion made by Dixie Robinson, seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments or questions? I just want to thank you, Ron, for your service, your work, and all the above. Thank you, thank you. You are a valuable person in this system. Any other comments?
I think we should point out, I think, was it the paper or someplace, I think they think that the $32,000 amount is for a 1 year. It's actually for 19 months.
It's an extended
It's an extended term, so somewhere, I can't remember where, someone said that's no, it's 19 months. That's almost 2 years, so.
Now, that accounts for some of the increase in that contract amount. But I also should say that his responsibilities have been increased a bit with your approval of the energy savings program. He is working to spearhead that project.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Bravo.
Next item is an approval for the agreement with the Richmond Art Museum. And Mrs. Scalf has worked with Mr. Dingworth at the Richmond Art Museum. Can speak to some of the pieces in that contract that may look different. I don't know that it's a very different contract, except some additional parking spaces are provided. But I would recommend approval of that contract as well. Agreement.
Okay. Motion made by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? Mr. Cross.
Point of clarification, I heard in the radio news this morning that part of the contract was for a $50,000 capital improvement to be done by the Art Museum. That is not part of the contract. There is a mechanism in place that creates a procedure that allows RAM, if they were of such a mind to do a major capital improvement, whether it be humidity control, whatever it might be, and we define a major capital improvement as one of $50,000, estimated $50,000 cost or more, to present their proposal ultimately to the board for approval after being filtered through administrative levels to make sure it's feasible, not compatible with the building, what have you. But there is no discrete project plan that would be implemented by the execution of this agreement, so I want everybody to make sure they understand that.
Okay, thank you.
Was there some funding, was there a funding mechanism for them then, the reason why we went to 3 years?
The reason behind the 3 years was once we were talking with Mr. Dingworth at the Art Museum, we determined that the contract has not changed for a very long time, and it is a mutually beneficial contract for everyone. And we thought that a 3-year term was long enough to provide the flexibility to make changes should we need to, but it also gave them some stabilization in that contract to know that we can bring that back rather than every year, every 3. So that was why we did that.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The next item has to do with our West End Bank agreement. We have 2 representatives from West End tonight out there in the audience. They've been very patient with some lengthy conversations here, and we appreciate that. I'll turn that over to Mrs. Scow for a recommendation.
Okay, this evening we bring the annual contract with West End to you for your approval. And we have seen great successes with this partnership, and I know that they're as excited as we are to continue that this year, so I ask for your approval of that contract.
Okay, a motion made by Aaron Stevens, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? Should we bring the...
I think we need to acknowledge their presence here in the meeting by
Exactly.
having them come forward.
We so appreciate your partnership.
Well, we appreciate our partnership with Richmond Community Schools. We're going now on our 8th year. It started with Garrison Schools of having a small deposit-only branch, and it's developed into a system-wide where we're with all of the elementary schools. We have a We Are Savers program with the intermediate schools. Although it's not as robust, we still haven't found a way yet to reach those students with an actual branch in their schools. However, we do offer those accounts to those students. And then, of course, there's the high school program, which we have an in-house branch located by the school cafeteria. And we also hire 2 students through the school year to man that branch and also to work with our staff at the East Side office. And this is Pam Hager, who is the branch manager, and she is also the individual who is working with the students on a daily basis. In this program, we've provided financial literacy to the students in the elementary schools, and also with the high school students too. One of the things that strikes me about this whole partnership, when we first started, we were the only school system in the state of Indiana that provided this type of partnership and this learning experience for the students. And it's nice to see that other people are emulating our program. But with that, especially West End Bank, and I know that you too do not want to rest on our laurels, and we always want to up that game. And I think there's some opportunities that we have with financial literacy, especially in the high school coming up, that we can reach more students, and we're really looking forward to that opportunity. We're real pleased this year. We decided to hire our student tellers early in the season as opposed to when the school system starts, and we have Hope Bumbleaw, who is a student teller, as well as Alexis Brown. We are amazed. They've been working with us for 3 weeks, and if you would like to talk a little bit about their professionalism.
Oh, yes, this is actually my 3rd year with the vocational, I keep calling them vocational students, but this is my 3rd duo. And Hope and Alexis both, they come to work every day dressed very professionally. They both act very professional. They're very nice young women. In fact, we kind of stole Alexis from a fast food restaurant. She would come in to cash her paychecks, and she just had this really great personality. And I knew I'd seen her when I'd manned, excuse me, the high school branch here. So one day she came in with her mom, so I asked them to come in and speak with me, and I found out that they had had a secret shopper where she worked before, and she had actually scored higher than any full-time person they had at that restaurant. So we kind of stole her away, and so she's working with us now, doing a great job. They're actually, as of Monday, they're in their own teller drawers, actually waiting on customers, running teller drawers on their own. Wow. Well, with somebody behind them. They're running teller drawers, balancing every day, doing everything a teller does.
So it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a success story.
Can't beat that kind of
And one of the changes that we're doing this year, we've had an ATM next to our student branch, and through conversations with Karen, we found out that you had a particular need through the events that you have at the Tiernan Center and people coming into our community. who are here to enjoy sports and other activities. And we are going to be moving that ATM to the Tiernan Center to not only still be available for our students, but also for people in our community and outside of our community that would like to spend their dollars in Richmond. So we're very excited about that also. So we're glad to have those kind of conversations to help meet your needs also.
Well, that's fantastic. Wow. We just can't wait to hear what is going to happen next.
We're going to set the bar high again.
It's been a great partnership.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
Thank you.
So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Our next item is the Title I plan, recommendation for the Title I plan, and we have Dr. Parker, who can speak to that and make that recommendation.
Okay, in your board packet, you should have had the information. Our allocation is higher than it has been in previous years. We've been restored from the sequestration that we underwent. And while we would love to use those funds to get more personnel in our buildings, given the fact that we're very uncertain about continued funding through general fund, we're really being very cautious of how we spend those extra dollars. When we talked about it with the principals, it was unanimous that we withhold some of those dollars off the top to purchase an additional iPad cart for each of the buildings. As you might recall, when the media specialists were here, those are a pretty hot item, pretty highly sought after item. And so we are purchasing an additional iPad cart for each of the buildings. And several of the buildings, if you looked at their plans, are using some of their funds to purchase yet another one for their building. They're hoping to have enough, eventually to have one per grade level. We are adding a pilot program at Vale Elementary. You might remember that we started the school year with one of the teachers from Community Youth Services going to Vale and working with those students during their reading block, one grade level at a time. And it really helped with students who needed that intensive intervention, not just academic intervention, but behavioral intervention. And so we're going to add a teacher at Vale and pilot that there to see if we can make an impact to keep kids in their buildings. And I believe that Dennis is elected to add an interventionist. So those are the only positions we've really added. I would recommend approval so that we can get this submitted.
Okay, I need a motion. Motion made by Suzanne Darengowski, seconded by Jeff Slifer. Comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Our next item is recommendation to approve the Richmond High School Athletic Handbook. This was a recommendation submitted by Mrs. Wolpe, who is at a conference right now. Mr. Bolser is on vacation, so responsibility for presenting this falls on me, but also Misty Hollis is prepared to answer questions that you might have.
Okay, motion to accept the handbook. Motion made by Aaron Stevens, seconded by Jeff Slifer. Comments or questions? Dixie.
I had one question. On page 19, it talked about, first it said no practices or whatever on Sundays, but then they changed it to IHSA guidelines should be followed. Now, does that mean practices could be called on Sunday, or does anybody know?
That's a great question.
He didn't brief you on that?
No.
I don't think they're
said,
allowed.
I just wondered.
Yeah, he just said that his comment to me was that, Mr. Bolzer's comment to me was that he was just making everything correct based on what needed to be changed.
So that it was consistent with IHSA.
Mm-hmm.
Which I used to know all those rules, but
It is, that is
I
the
don't.
IHSA rule, I believe, so.
Okay.
I think that is just a matter of not repeating yourself because you're going to follow the IHSA guidelines.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor signify. Jeff, do you have a question?
Well, I get, should we find the answer to that question out first, or does it make a difference?
No, it was just, I just wondered.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
The next item also comes from the athletic department, the high school, recommending that the attached agreement, which has been submitted on the web, between Richmond Community Schools and Reed Hospital and Healthcare Services to provide a certified athletic trainer to the high school for 2014 be forwarded for approval.
I so moved.
Okay, motion made by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Suzanne Darengowski. Comments or questions?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
We haven't got our finance committee reviewing contracts up and running just yet, but I do want to call your attention to the fact that this does have an automatic renewal clause for 1 year. So I know that's been a concern of some of the board members. However, if you'll also look at that same paragraph, you'll see that the agreement can be terminated upon 30 days' notice by either party without cause. So in my opinion, that pretty well mitigates any effect of an automatic renewal clause, and just basically means I have to, or somebody has to type this out less often, prepare it less often.
Thanks for bringing that to us. Appreciate that. Okay. No more comments or questions? Then all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And we are ready for our second public commentary. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? No one wishing to speak? Then we will move on to board reports, old business. Do we have anything?
I don't think I have anything.
I think we've pretty much covered it.
Well, the finance committee, I mean, we're,
Right, and Dr. Borf wasn't, he was gone for our agenda meeting, so we didn't get an opportunity to come back together on that. So,
It is in the works. It's just not ready to move forward right now. We're also looking, I've talked to Mrs. Scalf, there's a firm I want the committee to look at that reviews contracts, it reviews other agreements, and it looks at a number of relationships that you have with vendors. And all this is done for no cost unless they save money. And then there's a fee. I think we need to talk to them. It's a firm out of Newcastle. It's unlike any other company that I've seen coming to do business. And it works beautifully with that committee as it's being formed. So we're working at putting it together. We just haven't done that yet.
okay. So we will plan to have further conversation about the finance committee.
so, I mean, you have ideas about what it should be. Each person has different ideas, so we're going to have a all those are going to come together then.
Yeah.
And I think Dr. Borf was going to collaborate with Mr. Cross and so that we could work towards some guidelines of what the committee needs to follow.
Because I think initially, we were thinking a little bit more simplistic in the beginning, but I guess I don't want to spin our wheels for 6 or 12 months trying to get to the complex end when we can start with the simple end. So,
Keep it simple.
well, at least we have to get started. Budget. She's already got the budget almost done, I'm sure, so.
Okay, we will work on that. Preview of upcoming meetings.
You know, we don't have the preview ready tonight.
Okay.
Mrs. Morgeson, I did search the IHSAA, and their policy is against school-sponsored inter-school athletic contests on practices on Sundays.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. I think that's a good practice. Thank you for doing that, Suzanne.
You
Hey.
are welcome.
Press conference? Anybody? No? Well, I guess we're ready for adjournment.